I was afraid of.
What's the matter, Pat?
They're empty.
Well, whatever came out of them is dead now, right?
No, not the ones that hatched from these.
Welcome to today's show. My name is John. As always, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, formerly known as iTunes, or follow the links to social media in the podcast show notes. So please subscribe when you're finished listening. You can also go to classicmovierev.com to read notes, bios, and other random movie thoughts. We all survived the hurricane down here. Just had to go without electricity for 5 or 6 days and no internet for a little longer than that. In spite of that, I vow to get all of the shows for October, November, and December out eventually. You can drop by the site to purchase the Film Noir book. That really helps out, and I really appreciate it. So let's get on to the show. Today's movie is Them, 1954. This movie is a beloved sci-fi film that fits into the we messed up exploding bombs genre. There were spiders, grasshoppers, 50-foot tall women, shrinking men, and of course the king of the monsters, Godzilla, that were all created in this general way through blowing up atomic bombs. The film was rated 7.3 on IMDb.com and has an amazing 100% rating on the Tomato Meter and 76% audience approval on RottenTomatoes.com. Definitely worth the 93 minutes of your time. Most of the big reviewers left this movie alone. I don't know why. It's really good, and it has Tommy guns, bazookas, gas bombs, and giant ants. So all my boxes are checked. Actors.
Right. And I'm a Shakespearean actor.
We have a lot of returning actors for this one. James Whitmore played Police Sergeant Ben Peterson, the man that stumbled onto the ants. Whitmore was covered in episode 50, Battleground, 1949. Edwin Gwynn played Dr. Harold Medford, the brilliant, absent-minded ant expert. Gwynn was covered in episode 138, Miracle on 34th Street, 147, and he will always be Kris Kringle to me. Joan Weldon was the daughter of Harold, Dr. Patricia Medford, and she was also an ant expert. Weldon was covered in episode 60, The Command, 1954. James Arness played larger-than-life FBI agent Robert Graham. Arness was briefly covered in episode 50, Battleground, 1949. Venerable Willis Boucher had an uncredited role as a Washington, D.C. official. I thought he looked a lot like Ike. Boucher was covered in episode 37, The Violent Men, 1955. William Charette popped up as an uncredited ambulance driver. Charette was first mentioned way back in episode 14, Band of Angels, 1957. Dub Taylor also had an uncredited role as a railroad yard watchman accused of helping to steal 40 tons of sugar. Taylor was first covered in episode 15, The Undefeated, 1969. Sean McClory played the Irish-accented Major Kibbe. McClory was born in Ireland in 1924. He became part of the Abbey Players in Dublin. He rose through the ranks there, and by 1947 he headed to Hollywood. He began in America playing Irish cops in Dick Tracy movies. He had a small role in MGM's The Glass Menagerie 1950 and other films. Director John Ford cast him in The Quiet Man 1952. Other films include Les Miserables, 1952, Islands in the Sky, 1953, Film Noir Niagara, Them, 1954. John Ford directed The Long Grey Line, 1955, Moonfleet, 1955, another John Ford directed Cheyenne Autumn, 1964, and Bandolero, 1968. He was a major star on television, especially in westerns. I have heard, but not yet seen, that Plunder in the Sun, 1953 was his best film, in which he played an evil archaeologist. He had bleached white hair and wore dark Ray-Bans for the film. A good look for an archaeologist. McClory died in 2003. Harry Tyler was uncredited as Singing Harry from the Alcoholic Ward. Tyler was born in 1888 in New York City.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
He is known for Babbitt, 1934, The Grapes of Wrath, 1940, Behind Green Lights, 1946, San Quentin, 1946, Bedtime for Bonzo, 1951, Them, 1954, and The Naked Street, 1955. He died in 1961. 3 other actors showed up in very small parts. I'm going to wait to cover them until their roles are larger. Norman Feld was uncredited as General James. He is known as Mr. Roper, the Snoopy landlord on television's Three's Company 1976-82. Fess Parker played pilot Alan Crody, who crashed in Brownsville, Texas, the driest place on Earth. Finally, Leonard Nimoy was uncredited as the Army Sergeant. Nimoy is famous for playing Mr. Spock on Star Trek 1966-69, including franchise movies and shows through 1986. Story.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
This movie was made for the drive-in, and the title pops up on the screen with loud music over a desert scene. A New Mexico State Police airplane sends a call to Police Sergeant Ben Peterson, James Whitmore, who is in a patrol car with another officer. The pilot spots a girl walking in the desert and gives the radio car instructions. The little girl is holding a broken doll and walking with no expression on her face. She does not respond when Peterson talks to her. They load the girl into the car, and the pilot radios that there is a trailer 3 miles up the road and they should check it out. The driver of the police car goes to the trailer but quickly signals for the other officer to follow. The girl has fallen asleep, so they leave her in the car. The side of the trailer is torn off. There is old blood and money laying around, so it was not a robbery. They find some sugar cubes and the tracks of an animal they can't identify. They call for medics and support. The good detectives make a plaster cast of the prints. The ambulance driver is William Chalaret. They hear a high-pitched noise in the distance, and the girl sits up. Then the noise stops. Peterson and his partner head to Johnson's General Store as a sandstorm moves in. When they get to the store, it is destroyed like the trailer. There is no sign of the owner. Peterson finds a rifle bent in half. Finally, they find the dead owner in the cellar. The sugar barrels have been raided, and there are small ants there.
What do you make of it?
What did you make of the trailer?
Yeah. This wasn't pushed in, it was pulled out. Just like at the trailer.
Uh-huh. Ben, have a look at this.
Sugar.
Again, it's not a robbery. Peterson decides to go back to the station and leave the other guy at the store. Oh no. Peterson is no sooner gone than the other cop starts to hear the high-pitched sound. He goes outside to investigate. You hear him shooting, then screaming, and the sound continues. Peterson blames himself for the death of his partner. They continue the investigation, but they have few clues. The captain orders them to search the desert. The father of the girl was an FBI agent, so they bring them into the investigation with Robert Graham, James Arness. There are no turf battles, just working together to find the killer. Graham sends the footprint to the FBI lab. They get the autopsy report on the store owner, and other than generally being crushed, he is full of formic acid.
Got any ideas, Mr. Graham?
None that make any sense.
I thought you FBI guys were all quiz kids. Solved everything right away.
I did too when I applied for the job.
Yeah, come in. Hello, Fred. Hi, Doc. I finished the autopsy on Gramps Johnson. Do you want it technical or plain? Just plain, Doc. Get to the verb. Well, old man Johnson could have died in any one of 5 ways. His neck and back were broken, his chest was crushed, his skull was fractured, and here's one for Sherlock Holmes. There was enough formic acid in him to kill 20 men.
Shortly, they get a telegram from the FBI saying that Doctors Medford from the Department of Agriculture will be arriving. They arrive in an Air Force plane. First off is Dr. Harold Medford, Edmund Gwynn.
I still don't get this. Doctors Medford. 2 of them. Department of Agriculture.
You did send that cast to your outfit in Washington, didn't you?
Yeah. Dr. Medford?
Huh?
Are you Dr. Medford?
Yes. No need to shout.
Santa, is that what you do on your off-season? Next is Dr. Patricia Medford, Joan Weldon, the daughter of Harold. Harold wants to go right to work reading reports. Harold asks about where the first atomic bomb was exploded in 1945, 9 years prior. It's right in the middle of the attack area. Harold wants to go see the girl. The girl is still staring blankly and not talking.
Narcosynthesis would be a useless procedure until we've overcome the condition of aphonia.
What's aphonia?
Loss of voice. She's a classic case of hysteria conversion. Only a severe catharsis could jolt her at all.
May I have a small glass, Doctor?
Oh, yes, certainly.
Pat, that acid we got?
Acid?
Formic, Doctor. Thank you. It may provide the jolt you need.
Harold puts some formic acid in a glass and lets her smell it. She snaps to and runs out screaming, "Them, them!" The cops leave for the desert. They go to the trailer site. Harold asks about a mound or a cone. Pat says they would turn carnivorous. Graham gets upset that they are not being told anything, but he and Pat are bonding. Harold calls Pat over. He has found another print and figures that the thing is over 9 feet long. Harold still won't tell them what he suspects. Pat wanders off and finds another print. Then the sound starts again. A giant ant almost catches Pat. The men come in, guns ablazing, and Harold tells them to shoot off the antennae. Peterson gets a Thompson .45 caliber machine gun out of the car and wears the ant out. Harold finally tells them it is giant ants created from leftover radiation. They stand around gabbing about ants as the sound begins again. Peterson and Harold ride in a helicopter looking for the nest. Pat and Graham are in another helicopter. The pilot of the second helicopter is Major Kibbe, Sean McClory. They don't really explain the Irish accent. Graham spends time looking at Pat and not out the window. Finally, she sees the entrance to the mound, complete with ant guards. It is holding an intact rib cage, and there's a police belt there too. The general wants to bomb the nest. Harold says that won't work because the ants are hunting at night. He shows them a model of an ant mound. Harold says the time for the attack is high noon. He wants to flood the nest, but there is no water around. They will need to use heat. Major Kibbe says they can use bazookas to fire phosphorus on top, forcing them to stay inside.
What about phosphorus? We could lay it all over that mound with bazookas.
That'll keep the surface area hot, all right.
Mm-hmm.
What happens after that?
We then drop cyanide gas into the opening and kill them.
How can you be sure you get all of them?
We go into the nest and find out.
Harold then says that they will drop cyanide inside before going down and inspecting. They carry out the plan. When Peterson and Graham get ready to go inside, Graham gets upset that Pat is going in her father's place. Finally, she drops the, "Look, man, I'm a scientist" on him.
Boy, if I can still raise an arm when we get out of this place, I'm going to show you just how well saturated I can get.
I'm with you. Well, if I were a younger man,
What are you made up for?
I'm going with you and Ben.
Oh, no, you're not.
Listen, Bob, someone with scientific knowledge has to go.
Well, you tell us what to look for.
Look, Bob, there's no time to give you a fast course in insect pathology. So let's stop all the talk and get on with it.
They go in and only have to fight off a couple of ants that were in a sealed chamber. Of course, they use a Thompson machine gun and a flamethrower. The three explorers find the egg room, and Pat finds the shells where the 2 new queens have hatched and left the nest.
This is what I was afraid of.
What's the matter, Pat?
They're empty.
Well, whatever came out of them is dead now, right?
No, not the ones that hatched from these.
They burn the egg chamber. Harold explains that the 2 queens mean 2 more nests. The queens travel on wind currents. Harold is very doomsday-oriented. They inform Washington, D.C. One of the Washington naysayers, looking very much like Ike, is Willis Boucher. They set up a war room where they search for UFO sightings, sugar thefts, missing persons, and ant sightings. They keep a complete press blackout. One of the Army sergeants, Leonard Nimoy, knows what they are looking for, but not why. Finally, they get a notice that a man in Brownsville, Texas crashed his plane because he saw an ant-shaped flying saucer. Pat and Graham head to Brownsville. The pilot, Fess Parker, is raving about what he saw. Finally, they tell him that they believe him. When they leave, they tell the doctors not to let him out of the mental hospital until they call to say it's okay. Harold is defining the search area from Panama to California. Apparently, one of the queens got in the hold of a ship docked in Mexico. They hatched and killed the crew at sea. A military ship rescued survivors in the water and sunk the ship. The last male ant carcass was found outside of Los Angeles. Graham and Peterson go to L.A. to investigate the theft of 40 tons of sugar from a rail yard. The railroad yard watchman, Dub Taylor, was being held at the jail. When they ask him about the theft, he says if he was going to steal, it wouldn't be sugar. Did you ever hear of a fence for sugar?
I've been with the railroad 30 years and never blot against my record.
Well, that yard cop seems to think you made a deal not to see that car broken into.
Well, what kind of sense does that make? Is sugar a rare cargo? Is there a black market for it? Did you ever hear of a fence for hot sugar?
They let him go. Peterson talks to a woman whose husband has been killed and her 2 sons are missing. They ask the beat cops that found the dead man about all of the other peoples they had ticketed that night. 3 drunks and a blonde. The first 2 drunks are no help, and the blonde was rushing home from a date with a married man. The third, Harry Tyler, is in the detox ward. He is nutty as a squirrel turd. He finally tells him that he has been seeing things coming in and out of the sewer tunnels.
Looking for recruits?
No, not today, Mike.
Tell me something. You didn't see anything unusual yesterday or this morning, did you?
No, they're gone now. I did see some little airplanes this morning. They didn't seem big enough for them to get into.
Big enough for who to get into?
The ants. I'd like to get out of here, but I ain't gonna join the army to do it. You can't make me. There's laws, you know.
Yeah, we know there's laws, Jensen. What kind of ants did you see?
Oh, big ones. Ain't there now. Mostly at night I see them.
Where?
General, I make a deal with you. You make me a sergeant and charge the booze and I'll enlist. Make me a sergeant, charge the booze. Make me a sergeant and charge the booze.
Jensen.
Then he starts singing, "Make me a sergeant in charge of booze, make me a sergeant in charge of booze." Peterson and Graham head into the aqueducts and find evidence that the dead man had been down there with his sons. However, there is no evidence of the boys. Major Kibbe finds ant prints in the dirt. There are 700 miles of tunnels under the city, and they think the boys may be in there with the ants. They finally invite the press in and tell them about the ants. They put Los Angeles under martial law.
This is an emergency.
By direction of the President of the United States, in full agreement with the Governor of the State of California and the Mayor of Los Angeles, the City of Los Angeles is, in the interests of public safety, hereby proclaimed to be under martial law. A couple of months ago in the desert of New Mexico, gigantic ants were discovered. These ants are similar in appearance and characteristics to the household and garden pests you're familiar with, except that they are mutations, ranging in size from 9 to 12 feet in length. The New Mexico colony was destroyed, but 2 queen ants escaped. One has been accounted for and destroyed. The other is not yet being found, but is now known to have established a nest somewhere in the storm drains beneath the streets of Los Angeles.
Yes, folks, don't panic, but there are thousands of giant ants living under your feet. The government has everything under control. They mobilize the Army and the Marines to begin the battle. Harold and Pat are on the scene too. They can't burn the ants out because of the boys and the search for new queens. The military and the police head into the drains from all sides. The tunnels are big enough so they can drive jeeps inside. Pat, Graham, and Peterson are all in different jeeps. Peterson hears tapping and stops all of the jeeps. He goes into a small feeder drain. Oh baby, he takes his flamethrower along. He finds the boys and they are okay, but they hear the noise and 2 ants are closing in. Peterson thinks he is near the egg chamber. They send all of the troops towards Area 267 where the nest may be located. Peterson does a little ant roasting. He gets the boys out, but doesn't see the ant sneaking up behind him. It crushes Peterson, but Graham gets there and opens up on the ant. Peterson dies once he knows the boys are okay. The military form a firing line and the ants try to counterattack. Harold comes down and stops the firing. They can't use gas or explosives. The roof falls in and traps Graham alone on the ant side. A couple of ants get after him, but he holds him off with his Thompson until the others break through. Harold and Pat arrive, and there are new winged queens. They burn them out with the flamethrowers. Finally, Graham says if these ants are from the first atomic bomb, what about all the other bombs?
Pat, if these monsters got started as a result of the first atomic bomb in 1945, what about all the others that have been exploded since then?
I don't know.
Nobody knows, Robert. When man entered the atomic age, he opened a door into a new world.
what we'll eventually find in that new world, nobody can predict.
Harold gives a dire warning that man has opened a new world, and no one can predict what is in the new world. World famous short summary: no animals were harmed during the filming of this movie. Hope you enjoyed today's show. I really appreciate you spending the time listening. You can find connections to social media and email on my site, classicmovierev.com. There are links to the podcast show notes as well. Remember, the show is completely free and independent. All that I ask is you jump over to Apple Podcasts and give me a review. It really helps the show get found. Beware the Moors.